meeting of the Senate Finance Committee for weekday, forecast day, February 29th, the first meeting of the year will come to order. And only thing I will do before we begin is I would like to introduce our two new committee pages, Spencer Olson and Luke Seck. They will be with the committee for the rest of the session. The rest of the staff, I think, is all remain the same. And the first bill we have on the agenda today is Senator Dibble, Senate File 3660, Metro Mobility Funding Forecast Clarification Provision. And I believe, Ms. Boyd, you had a suggested clarifying language, which you put in the form of a delete everything, which has been put in the packets. Senator Friends will move the A2 amendment to put us in front of us. Is there any discussion of that amendment? It's technical, I guess Senate Council came up with it on a better way, for a better way to deal with this. Is there any discussion on the A2 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Dibble on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'm so excited to be presenting the inaugural 2024 finance bill. I didn't realize that this was your first meeting of the year. So, Mr. Chair and members, thank you for supporting the A2 delete everything amendment. I'm going to explain the bill, hopefully in very simple terms and very quickly. What this bill is largely technical in nature, and it recognizes the step that we took a couple of years ago to make Metro Mobility in the metropolitan area a forecasted service, a forecasted program. Just as a quick reminder, Metro Mobility, of course, is paratransit, on-demand transit service for people with mobility impairments. And it is, of course, a required service that we provide in the metropolitan area, required by the federal government, and keeps us in compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act, and of course extremely important in its own right because it provides people access to the opportunities they need to lead happy, thriving, and successful lives. And to that end, that is why we, rather than simply being reliant in the transportation budget on the target that we receive, knowing full well that the entirety of that general fund target would need to be devoted to Metro Mobility, the federal fund, the state funding, which is, the funding needed minus the federal funds that are received for this purpose, would be assumed in forecasting the state. Like, for example, what we heard this morning assumes fully funding the needs of Metro Mobility, and it's just assumed in the budget that we prepare for transportation so that we don't get into this big fight for general fund dollars to do what we have to do, what we're required to do. So what this bill does is recognize what we've already done. I think we got the date a little bit wrong. However, Mr. Chair, you and your counterpart sent the proverbial chair's letter to MMB, assuring that this was legislative intent and the details of it would be remedied at the first available opportunity in this legislative session. But of course, what was a really simple bill, as you see the bill as introduced, with a little bit of more thought and reflection, becomes slightly more complicated. And so if you look at line 2.8, that's just another little quick technical catch to make sure we're talking about identifying the right thing for forecast adjustments, just getting that reference correct. And then the additional language that you see down on, starting on line 2.15 to 2.16, simply recognizes that we've already done the forecasting for, the current forecast. And paragraph D refers to some of the financial review and some of the consideration that goes into figuring out those numbers and reporting those out to the legislature. And the way it's written, of course, it would refer to prior 2 years before this was a forecasted program. So that in and of itself doesn't make sense. The other thing that doesn't make sense is to require that this be done for something that's already been done. So it just simply breaks out the effective date to recognize that it's slightly retroactive because it is for the forecast that we currently received. And then as we're looking prospectively on this reporting and this analysis, that effective date would begin with future forecasts. So basically, paragraph, if you look on the first page, subdivision 10, lines 1.4 all the way down to 1.24, that's a retroactive effective date. And then starting at line 1.25 through 2.9, that's the prospective effective date. All right, is that clear? Thanks. Krista Boyd is here who can help make it even more clear if I haven't been clear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Ms. Boyd, can you tell me, what was the impact on the November and the February forecast for this change?
Mr. Chair and Senator Pratt, I deeply apologize. I don't have the November numbers in front of me. I know that the February forecast was slightly down for Metro Mobility, I believe due to some increased Medicare payments, so the general fund obligation will be down for that, but I'll have to get better numbers for you from the forecast this morning. I can tell you that the appropriation, the direct appropriation that's still in effect for fiscal year 24 and 25 in the budget bill was about $56 million per year from the general fund, and that the forecasted number for 26 on was slightly above that. So I apologize. I'll get those to you as soon as I can.
Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I've got a problem with procedure here. That we are passing bills that have a retroactive impact, that we've got items included in the forecast that haven't passed this legislature. The forecast should be based on current law. And we may want to fix these things, but simply a letter from the chairs that impact and hide the impact of, say, this change, or we talked about this on the Senate chamber floor about how the impact to the tax bill fix was baked into the forecast before anybody got a chance. So Senator Klein could stand up and say this has no fiscal impact, but that's not true. It was just simply hidden because we put it in the forecast when it wasn't state law. We don't know that these laws are going to pass in such a way that would accurately reflect the forecast, whether it was the tax bill, whether it's this bill. And Mr. Chair, I just have a real concern that MMB is being politicized by the trifecta, the majorities in both houses and the governor, to push, to use the forecast in such a way to hide the impacts of legislation and hide the impacts of the mistakes of bills that were passed in a hurried fashion last year. So I'll support the bill today, but I just wanted to make my concern over process since this is our first meeting on the record.
Thank you. And Senator Pratt, I believe this practice has been going on in the past where they will rely on, when there's an error in things, they have relied on chairs' letters in the past under both party things. That's my understanding of the way it's worked in the past. Senator Pratt.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. That may be. I'm not familiar with that. And on my time in the Finance Committee, I would also say that, if we were to go back to the tax bill, there were multiple errors made, but we only chose to fix a few of them. And only those few that we chose to fix were the ones that we included in the forecast. And it feels like, it prevented this legislature from taking any additional action on those bills. We had to stay, as Senator Klein said on the Senate floor, we had to stay within the fiscal constraints of that bill. So, and again, it hid the impact. There was a $350 million impact on the tax bill that affected the state budget and affected the revenue forecast, and yet that was all hidden because of the forecast. We never had a chance to look at it. There was never a fiscal note, never a revenue note generated. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Senator Westrom, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in part, Senator Dibble, just want to take this opportunity to just highlight Metro Mobility a little more, but highlight it in the sense that I've been a critic to some degree. I understand the important need of it, but if any of you have been around different times, you know, the current Metro Mobility system, while there's probably a strong backbone, we can always do better. It's not very dynamic, and several years ago, I worked to try to get a taxi voucher or ticket. I know Metro Mobility has done some of that. To my knowledge, it's been not ever advanced a lot, but Mr. Chair and Senator Dibble, I just wanted to use this opportunity to highlight the need for Metro Mobility, but challenge us that we can make this much more dynamic without more money, or take the money we're using and spread it a lot further in places. And so to that end, Senator Dibble and members, I mean, the basis of the Metro Mobility system, and I don't know if any of you have used it, I have. But just because you're disabled doesn't mean you got a whole day to get somewhere. And that's a bit of an exaggeration, but not far. You generally have a an hour window. You need to call in advance about an hour and 2 hours before you need to be someplace. You got about a half-hour window to pick up. So, you know, you call a taxi and say, I need a ride at 10 a.m. Doesn't mean 10:30. And I get Metro Mobility. I understand why they have to have these parameters, because they can't be everywhere at once. But if you're somebody with a disability and need to plan this, you have to take 4 hours out of your day just to plan your ride and your one appointment. So now, if you've got a 10 o'clock appointment somewhere, you have to at least be picked up by 8 o'clock, giving them an hour and a half to deliver you or bring you to your destination, because there's going to be other rides along the way they're going to coordinate. So you get picked up from your appointment at noon, and now you've got at least 2 hours till you get back home. Well, an 8-hour day, 6 hours is eaten up out of your 8-hour day. And so I'm not using this to try to criticize it, but I am using it to say I'm interested in continuing to make this more dynamic. Using taxis like we used to was something that the people in the disability community, by and large, always liked better, because it made it much easier to call, get somebody when you need it, and get to where you need to go. We have those systems in place, and so I think Metro Mobility, we just got to always keep the backbone in place, but let's make it more dynamic. And to that end, I've talked for a few years now, and I still am interested in figuring out a modified system in rural Minnesota. I've talked to some counties over the time in what I dub rural Uber. That's a bit of a tongue twister, but it's a little bit of a interesting concept. And if we can take some of these dollars we're putting into transit anyways, let people that need them use those dollars for an Uber or a taxi, you can take the same money and make the system much more dynamic. And so as we embed continual money in the forecast for Metro Mobility, let's not just think we've done our job and Metro Mobility is going to stay stagnant. And we need to be sure that it is efficient. We're using the dollars the best we possibly can, but the riders have the best system we could. And we didn't have Uber 10 years ago like we do today, and Lyft, and I'm just saying Uber generally. We've got taxis, we've got Ubers, we've got Lyft. We have dynamic options now that didn't exist. And if any of you haven't seen the advertisements on TV, I took note this fall, it's the first time I've seen it. But one of the advertisements for Uber is a lady who's blind and talks about how much it's given her her independence to have that flexible transportation option. And so, Mr. Chair and Senator Dibble, I don't need any response necessarily, happy to take some, but I'm just kind of using this as a opportunity to refocus us and keep us focused on this system can always use improvement and make it much more dynamic. And we've got options today that didn't exist 10 and 15 years ago. And so I hope we're open-minded to that and not just locking in funding that's going to keep a stale system the way it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago that works, but it doesn't really work if you're a busy person with a disability. And so just happy to work with you on that, Senator Dibble. No critique of your bill or you on this. I just wanted to use it as a platform. I'm still wanting to find a way we can use some of these transportation dollars in a rural Ubers type system, but that same system could work in the metro even more efficient because you've got the populations that we don't have in rural Minnesota. But you know, many times a car is cheaper to ride around than a van, and not everybody needs a van. But if they do, then let's make sure those vans with lifts are available for those that are non-ambulatory and not have them tied up with people that maybe are ambulatory and still need assistance. So just some comments, Senator Dibble. Wanted to take this opportunity and as continue to work on these types of efforts. Look forward to working with you as well.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Westrom. I could not agree more with every single thing you said. And so I won't repeat what you've said. I will only offer this, that the Office of the Legislative Auditor is right now doing a program analysis of Metro Mobility, and that report is due soon, any day now. I hear through the grapevine that it's going to be a fairly strong critique along the lines of everything you've said. It is my intention to bring that report to the Transportation Committee, then also open up the Transportation Committee to public testimony so that we can hear directly from the public that is served and has been failed by Metro Mobility. And then I like your extension to having, a discussion about transit and paratransit for all kinds of communities around the state. And I will be sure that we schedule that hearing for a time that you're available to sit at the table with us.
Is there further discussion on the bill? If not, Senator Friends moves that Senate File 3660 be recommended to, as amended, be recommended to pass. On that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
Thank you, Senator Dibble and Ms. Boyd. Senator Hurd. And Ms. Nash, welcome to the Senate Finance Committee, the OCCMR appropriations bill. You or Ms. Nash going to go through?
Yes. I'll just say a little introduction first, Mr. Chair and members. Senate File 3507 includes funding for 101 environmental and natural resource projects across our state, totaling $79.644 million. This is the annual Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resource, or LCCMR bill. The project are the recommendation of 17 members of LCCMR that comprise of the House, the Senate members, and appointed citizen. I want to acknowledge Senator Westrom, who is a member of LCCMR and have excellent attendance and was a leader in our committee. Also, Senator Dame, who has served in LCCMR in the past. There's no general fund in this bill. Funding come from the Environmental Natural Resource Trust Fund, which was created through the constitutional amendment and receive annual proceed from the state lottery for the purpose of protecting, conserving, preserving, and enhance Minnesota air's water, land, fish, wildlife, and other natural resources. The bill includes a diversity of projects from research to environmental education to land protection to creation of local park and trail amenities, from harmful algal blooms, microplastic, PFAS, and road salt to conservation, grazing, urban forest, shoreline restoration, creation opportunities for family fishing, and continue funding for our state preeminent terrestrial invasive pests and plants research center at the University of Minnesota. And I'm happy to answer any question along with LCCMR Director and nonpartisan staff, Becca Nash. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hurd. Ms. Nash, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Again, Becca Nash, I'm the director of the LCCMR, and I'll just give a slight brief recap of ENRTF, the LCCMR, and the process that LCCMR followed to develop the recommendations that are before you today, and then I'll do a quick walkthrough of the bill. We've also provided handouts in your packets as well. As Senator Hurd said, the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund is a permanent fund in the state treasury that was created by voters through constitutional amendment to support Minnesota's environment. It's funded with proceeds from the Minnesota State Lottery as well as income from investments that are managed by the State Board of Investment. The LCCMR is responsible for making recommendations to the legislature on how these funds are spent, as well as conducting oversight of these approved projects and their associated expenditures. Our typical process, recommendations result from a multi-stage competitive process that starts out with the release of our annual request for proposals. That RFP identifies the priorities for funding that LCCMR has established through its strategic planning. Proposals are reviewed, members hear presentations, and research projects also undergo additional external scientific peer review. The top proposals are selected and must be approved by at least 11 of the 17 members to become a formal recommendation to the legislature. This year, as Senator Hurd said, we had $79,644,000 for recommending. We received 218 proposals requesting $174 million. 101 projects were selected by the commission for recommendation to the legislature, and they did pass that threshold of 11 members voting in favor. The recommendations also include changes to and carry forwards to previous year's appropriations. So as for the bill, it is broken down by subdivision according to the LCCMR priority area that's established in the RFP. And the first of those is the foundational and natural resources data and information. That starts on page 2. And that subdivision includes approximately $14.9 million in appropriations for 28 projects. Subdivision 4 is water resources, and that includes approximately $6.9 million in appropriations for 13 projects. Subdivision 5 is environmental education and includes approximately $11.2 million for 22 projects. Subdivision 6 is aquatic and terrestrial invasive species and includes about $8.3 million for 4 projects. Subdivision 5 is air quality, climate change, and renewable energy. This is $4.8 million for 5 projects. Subdivision 8 is methods to protect or restore land, water, and habitat, and this is about $11 million for 16 projects. Subdivision 9 is land acquisition, habitat, and recreation, and includes $20 million for 10 projects. Subdivision 10 is administrative and emerging issues, and this includes approximately $2 million for 3 appropriations. And then subdivisions 11 through 17 are conditions of funding that are typically added, that are included every year. What you see is the same as it has been in prior years, except for one slight change to the timeline that we are requesting for reviewing conservation easements that are submitted to LCCMR staff. Subdivision 18, starting on page 43, includes those funding carry forwards. These are previously funded projects that just need a little more time to complete their outcomes. Section 3 through 7 include technical changes to prior appropriations. These start on page 47 and continue to the end of the bill. There's a change to the National Loon Center prior appropriation. The Loon Center would like to change the location that they are doing their construction, and so the changes you see in the bill will allow that change of location to take place. And also puts in some standard acquisition requirements as well as some new requirements for capital construction projects that were passed in the laws of 2023. The rest of the technical changes are releasing projects from requirements to return earned revenue to the trust fund. And in most cases, it's to allow them to reinvest any of those revenues into the maintenance and operations for their constructed projects. And those projects affected are Crane Lake, Voyageurs National Park Visitor Center, Silver Bay Trailhead, Floodwood Campground, and a project called Developing Markets for Continuing Living Cover Crops. That's it for the walkthrough.
Questions from the committee? Senator Friends. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Director Nash. Thank you, Senator Herr, for bringing this forward and for all the members. Senator Herr, you know I'm not a huge fan of legislators abdicating their spending rules and authority, except in LCCMR. I think you have done an outstanding job here, and I think the way it's set up and the way voters have approved it, the people are served and the public interest is this. So I'm going to be a yes vote on this bill. I did have a couple questions, if you don't mind. First of all, as you know, both of our committees have climate change responsibility. Maybe this is better for Director Nash, but do you mind sharing with the Finance Committee just a tiny bit more about those projects that are included in that category, please?
Sure. Director Nash, you could,
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chair. Oh, that's a good question. Mr. Chair and members, this is subdivision 7, and I will get there in one moment. And I would also just say we do have a category that includes projects related to climate change and air quality and renewable energy. But something that we have found, especially in our strategic planning process, is that it's really hard to suss out climate change from all the other projects that were funded. So while there are some projects in this subdivision, there are plenty more projects throughout the bill that either directly or indirectly relate to mitigating climate change or adapting to impacts or evaluating and measuring impacts and incorporating that into management guidance for the state. So I'm still scrolling down to the section. Did you get there? Thank you. Okay, we have a project under subdivision 7 on page 23, a project called Minimizing Minnesota's Landfill Problem and Expanding Waste Diversion. This is primarily about making sure that waste is not going to our landfills. We have a project called Building Resilient Urban Forests for Climate Change, and this is ramping up Minnesota's capability to grow and plant and take care of urban forests and to increase forest cover in our towns. And particularly, this one is focused in St. Cloud, Mankato, and the Twin Cities. We have a project called Improving Agricultural Ecosystems Through Autonomous Weed Control. This is a project that's focusing on decarbonizing Minnesota's agricultural operations, and this is looking at solar and wind-powered weed control through autonomous vehicles. We have a project called Advanced Biofilter for Nitrogen Oxide Removal. This is a tool that's been developed that it's actually already been patented, and it's looking at ways that this tool can be applied to various sources to reduce the release of nitrous oxide into our environment, which is, of course, a harmful greenhouse gas. And then finally, this project the final project here called Managing Future Floods and Droughts in Minnesota is leveraging new statewide climate data to assess future changes in the duration, frequency, and magnitude of heavy precipitation and drought events to engage communities to prepare for these extremes.
Senator Friends.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Nash. All sound like good projects. Glad to support them all. Senator Hurd, just so we talked about it briefly, we should talk about the way the state taxpayers look at climate change and environment. We have, again, both of our jurisdictions who have that. And, you know, for those that are following along the dollars part, we have in the energy division, the renewable development account. And there's some clear overlap here, members. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying we should work to try to streamline, kind of to Senator Pratt's point about process. We want to maximize the dollars, and the renewable development account actually comes from the storage of nuclear waste, so the money comes from a different place, but the spirit of what we're trying to do on carbon emission reduction, climate change, I wonder if there's a conversation we can have going forward. Again, very nice work here, very proud to vote yes on it. Just kind of throwing that out there, Senator Hur. Maybe we'll talk to our House counterparts about that sometime. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Prince. Is there a question? Senator Champion and then Senator.
Okay. Senator Champion?
I am curious about, I do see that, like on page 15, that there's lots of training and education that's going on throughout the state, and also in places to connect, K-12 and others. Can you point out in the bill where there's a direct linkage and connection to communities of color? Because one of the things that I have known is that we do need to expand education in those areas. And so can you direct me to where there is that nexus?
Sure. Thank you, Senator Champion. I'll ask Director Nash to point to the language, but we do try to.
I'm sorry, Senator Hur, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you go closer to your mic and then
Okay.
show me where specifically in the bill, and I can turn to those pages as well?
Okay. I'll defer that to pinpoint to where the bill is to Director Nash, but we did have, just a summary. We did have a conversation over representation and make sure that the program that are set in place do go to community colors and in the metro area as well. So Director Nash, do you?
Mr. Chair and members, I do have about 14 projects that I can point you to, and I have them by subdivision, if that's okay, subdivision and paragraph. So subdivision 3B, there's a project called Reconstructing Historical Wild Rice to Understand Its Future. This is working with tribal nations.
Again, Commissioner, I'm having a hard time hearing you, so if you could be closer to your mic, that'd be helpful.
Mr. Chair and members, how is that?
I think you said subdivision 3B, did you say?
Subdivision 3B.
Okay.
There's a project called Reconstructing Historical Wild Rice to Understand Its Future. This is working with tribal nations. 3E, Turtle Island Skywatchers, Minnesota Research and Data Visualization. This is a tribal-led nonprofit. Subdivision 3H, a project called Investigating Life History Characteristics of Minnesota Elk. This also is a partnership with tribal nations. Subdivision 3AA, this is genetic detection of endangered mussels in the Mississippi River. This is also a partnership with a tribal nation.
So can I clarify my question? Because I think you are working with tribal nations, but there are other communities of color. And so, and in those communities of color would be important. So
You
not
bet.
just saying you're working with a tribal nation, but yet and still, there's no real intentionality where those programs are in communities of color so that communities of color can participate.
Great.
So perhaps that filter might help in the direction that you're going.
Mr. Chair and members, and I was just working through my list here, and I think once we get to the environmental education category, subdivision 5, we have more projects that are working with tribal nations, but we also have projects that are specifically targeted to to communities of color. We have Project 5C, supporting Minnesota teachers to implement culturally sustaining environmental education. We have Project 5G, which is.
So just so we're clear on, Mr. Chair, may I ask you? Just so that we're clear in 5C, this says the fund to the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota to provide workshops across Minnesota to train middle school and high school teachers. So I'm not certain if that would meet my definition, at least of what I'm asking
In
about.
communities. Okay. Let me see if I can do a better job here. We have, for example, Project 5G, which is called Mentoring the Next Generation of Conservation Professionals. This might not be in a community of color necessarily, but it's targeting youth from communities of color to work with Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge. This is providing internships and apprenticeships for diverse young people to introduce them to careers in the conservation field. Not. Perhaps, Mr. Chair and members, I can do a little more research and get back to you, because I think that we do have some representation in this project, in the bill. Although I would say that you are right, the funding usually goes to one entity, and that one entity may not reflect the full diversity of the partnership that's behind the project, because the funds need to go to one entity. There can be many parties as part of that project that are receiving funds, and then even many partners beyond those who are receiving funds.
Mr. Chair, thank you. That'd be great if you
Okay.
can certainly get me that information, because I think a part of my concern has been with the LCCMR is that there's language that's used, but yet its impact and where the benefits happen doesn't seem to be going across the state of Minnesota and into those areas where, for an example, even education, there's a lack of it happening strategically and intentionally in certain communities. And so I just wish that there was more. I know that there isn't anymore. So you can perhaps, if I'm missing something, share that with me at some other time, but I just want to express my disappointment about it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Senator Champion, and I understand you greatly, is based on the proposal that people submitted in, and we rank them. Each members are the whole process of selecting this project and whether we vetted through is we rank them, and there are a few, and we'll get to you on the one that going to the metro and also work with people of color. I was a proponent of that in the committee along with Senator Westrom, and we may not see, we may be at different spectrum on ideas and such, but it's based on the proposal that's submitted in front of us. In the future, perhaps the Environmental Trust Fund will allocate some money specifically for smaller nonprofits, and that will probably more clarify and answer your needs and my needs directly on that area, but I understand where you're going at as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Senator Champion, I just want to note that there is a project to the Lopet Foundation that is called North Minneapolis Nature Connections, Storytelling and Leadership Pathways. And this is the Lopet and community collaborators promoting urban nature connection for North Minneapolis residents through storytelling, nature, and environmental justice programming and environmental leadership pathways for high schoolers and young adults.
Mr. Chair? You are making my point, because Lopet is a great organization, but if you go to the projects that they do, it is not as inclusive as it should and could be. And to Senator Hurd's response, thank you, but I know that there's Phyllis Wheatley. I know that there are others that have met the criteria. In fact, the camp that they had or have is up in northern Minnesota in order to make sure that kids from the inner city could go and explore things, and you all rejected that project like twice in a row. So thank you.
Senator Trent.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Senator, thanks, Director. This is where we ask these questions. Do you mind commenting on the geographic distribution of the projects? I think we have 6 from Greater Minnesota on the Finance Committee. Just asking for your take in general. Is this money spread around the state? And if so, just a few words, if you don't mind, about how we know it's spread out equally so that each part of our great state can feel a part of it. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Senator Trent, and I'll defer the geography on that, but I do want to check on Camp Ripley project that Senator Champion did mention, and so that we don't leave out. And that I didn't recall that coming through our committee, so, maybe.
Just so they know, it's Phyllis Wheatley Community Center,
Oh, yes.
and it's a camp that goes by a slightly different name that I can't remember right now, but I'll grab that name in particular. But I know because I've talked to the LCCMR and just different people as to why they keep getting denied, and it's such an important project around all the issues of the environment. So I know that there are projects that are constantly looked over. But I do think that Senator Friends brings up a good notion. I'd love to hear what projects are in North Minneapolis. That'd be great. Not on the peripheral, because Lopit is technically in Golden Valley, which is a suburb.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and member, I have a map we've put together, and I can make sure this gets sent to the committee, but it shows the geographic distribution of the projects. Again, there are 101 projects. There are 9 that are located in our northeast region, 4 in the northwest, 12 in the central, 4 in the southwest, 8 in the southeast, 17 in the metro, and then we have 47 that are considered statewide projects.
Yes, Senator Champion.
I think I found the project. It's Camp Parsons. Phyllis Wheatley's Camp Parsons.
Senator Hurd.
Thank you, Senator Champion and Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Senator Champion bringing that, and I will put that into my attention, as the next LCCMR project. I do encourage the stakeholder to connect with me, so it's on my radar as well, because I certainly don't want to miss any project that direct to people of color, especially those that are facing disparities. And environment is important. We live in a state where we have all the amenity that we have and all the build-up that we could create, tailor the next generation for being steward of our environment and ecosystem. So there's a great opportunity out there, and I certainly don't want black and brown folks to miss out on. I don't want us to miss out on getting the next layer of black and brown generation, new generation, on this opportunity, creating, building a stewardship.
Thank you. Senator James.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it interesting, some of the conversations that's going on. I'm no longer an LCCMR. I was for many, many years. And there's a process that the LCCMR committee uses to go through all of these projects. They rank them, they rate them, they vote on them. And it's not just throwing a dart against the wall and see what sticks. They put a lot of time and effort into this. And so I get a little concerned when I start hearing conversations back and forth why something didn't get accepted. Maybe it should have got accepted. That concerns me because there's a good process set in place. And when we start trying to blend that process and start trying to request certain things be put into it or start pushing pressure on people, we're going to lose that process. When we lose that process, we're going to find that this is going to be a much more complicated process. So it's a process that works well. I think everybody has the right to ask questions. Certainly that's fine, but I think we're getting a little straying off a little bit here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
In Senator Hurd and Ms. Nash, what's the status of next year's cycle? Where are you right now in it?
Mr. Chair and members, our RFP, so for our request for proposals that will be coming to you as recommendations for next legislative session. Our RFP is open right now, and the deadline is March 27th. And we do, especially kind of speaking to some of these issues, LCCMR staff has advertised that we are always available to help answer any questions, but we are also available kind of on a first come, first serve basis as we have time to review draft proposals, and we are prioritizing new applicants. So we encourage folks to reach out if they have any questions or have interest in applying to a funding for us.
So people have about a month now to get their projects.
Yep.
Further discussion, Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, just a little to the conversation we've had. You know, we do go through a process. Senator Champion, I know Senator Dietrich's another member of our commission, and I don't remember that project just exactly the wheres and the whys, but just for the committee member, Mr. Chair, or committee members more so as well. Senator Dames touched on it, but you know, and Director Nash just touched on it too. Some of what we've tried to do as a commission is to encourage others that maybe haven't known about this opportunity for their community or their region or their project to improve or enhance or protect the environment, to apply. And one of the things we've often commented on or noticed as a commission is how many people are perennial appliers, and this wasn't necessarily set up to be a perennial fund that's going to fund organizations, many of them nonprofit, for their cash flow for year after year after year after year after year after year. Now, I'm not saying or necessarily, Senator Champion, that that's the situation the group is that you were advocating for, but sometimes that's what we look at, and there's others that come in that have a good project, new, and we want to make sure there's opportunities for applicants across the state. We even, a few years ago back, and added a small project category just to highlight it and bring it to our commission attention of projects that are under $200,000, feeling that helps spread the money if people have a solid, good local projects or regional projects. We should try to find ways to make those projects be more noticeable and give them strong scrutiny and an opportunity to hopefully find more projects that we can benefit areas of the state with the purpose of the Environmental Trust Fund. So that all does go into those considerations, but certainly there's no exact science to it. And Senator Champion, I'd welcome, you know, when some of those projects that are important to you or other legislators, let us that represent the Senate on the commission know that those are extra projects that you're aware of, because that's kind of like anything. If you know somebody is more aware of it, you can ask good questions and know more about some of them, because a lot of times it's a project you only can read on paper what that is, and then if we call them in, and we only call in about a third of the proposals to give a presentation and ask more questions, because we get 200 to 300 projects, and that's the reason for the commission. Otherwise, this committee would probably have to lock itself in a room and sequester for a week or probably a month, Mr. Chair, if we were going to try to work through that. And that's why the commission distills it down. That doesn't mean they can't be changed and we can't add things or change things, but it does help bring that big end of the funnel down to a narrow end. And so certainly, as commission members, let us know as fellow senators if there's projects that you're aware of that people have contacted you that they're applying. But right now is a good time to encourage your constituents to apply if they've got a good project. Mr. Chair, just a couple quick questions for the author and Director Nash or whoever can answer, but Senator Herr, can you just approximately a couple things in this bill, can you just talk to us about how many acres and dollars are we estimating are going towards purchase of land in this bill, if you can give us just a roundabout number?
Sure, I think I have to look at the section of the bill, but maybe look like Director Nash already had her finger on it, so Director Nash.
Ms. Nash.
Mr. Chair and members, the approximate numbers of acres that are proposed to be acquired are 645 acres for state acquisition, 300 acres for local unit of government or metropolitan acquisition, and then 500 acres of conservation easement acquisition.
And Senator Herr or Director Nash, maybe you can just highlight for the committee. I know there's a few projects in there that help optimize or improve wastewater. Can you just talk to us a little briefly about those dollars and number of projects as well?
Mr. Chair and members, I might need to do a little bit more digging to get to those. Senator Westermore, were there one or two in particular?
No, there's at least, I think, two from the University of Minnesota.
Oh, yes.
Dealing with wastewater. I'm trying to recall if there's even a third or fourth one from the MPCA with some other optimization, but Senator Herr, maybe just talk about some of those projects if you could, to highlight them for the committee.
Mr. Chair and members, I have two that I'm thinking of immediately here. One is subdivision 4D. This is enhancing wastewater treatment through genetic sequencing. This is a project being conducted, that would be conducted by the University of Minnesota, and they are going to generate genome sequences of bacteria growing in wastewater treatment bioreactors to allow improvements in phosphorus and nitrogen removal from wastewater in Minnesota. That is one project. Another project is 4G, and this is novel nutrient recovery process from wastewater treatment plants. This is another University of Minnesota project. And this is funding for a new integrated process with potential to promote nutrient removal and recovery and renewable energy production at rural, municipal, and industrial wastewater treatment plants.
Thank you, Director Nash. And Senator Herr, I just wanted the committee to hear about some of those projects. And I mean, it's a wide range that we fund dealing with the environment, but certainly wastewater affects big cities and small cities and even rural residents. And so it's something that I've wanted to always highlight how important it is that we address some of these issues. And you can't probably get much better ways to improve and enhance and protect the environment than bringing in better wastewater technologies or helping with technologies to just treat and deal with wastewater, and that's another aspect of this bill. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Herr, Ms. Nash, I was curious about one of the smaller projects, mitigating the spread of invasive jumping worms. I wasn't even aware what they were until 2 or 3 years ago. How widespread are they? How many forests are at risk of them now? I know it's a problem in parts of the metro area, but how big is the problem? Senator Herr.
Mr. Chair, you know, it's a growing problem, but like the testifier had presented a very convincing testimony to us, and perhaps if Director Nash can reiterate the information that they gave us, Mr. Campana also here as well as our lifeline. So to give you that comments, and it's a growing invasive species in our state.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm not sure I'll be able to quantify the threat at this point. I can do some research and get back to you on that, but they have been around for a while, and they are in particular a threat to our deciduous forests. And the reason they are a threat is because they eat the duff layer that is the sort of protective cover over the soil that's creating the environment for reproduction of the forest to occur. So it's basically making it harder for seedlings to take root and to start to grow. So it is a significant threat to our state's forests.
I had never heard of the problem before, but I guess the way it breaks up the soil is weird, but it causes a lot of trouble for tree roots and so on as well.
For trees, and it is actually potentially being passed through gardens and nurseries. And so the nursery industry is in particularly interested in this project as well, to figure out ways to stop the spread.
Further discussion, Senator Champion?
Mr. Chair, I want to just make sure that I address a couple issues that were said around the table, because I think this is important and an important discussion. Number one, Camp Parsons has been around since 1956, and it was developed as an opportunity to create programming to expose African Americans and others, so whoever is in North Minneapolis, to the outdoors and to nature. And in fact, they are credited with doing this important work long before the environmental movement. So everything you're talking about today and what we're supposed to be doing with the LCCMR is what they were doing. And just to make sure that we're clear, Senator Westrom, they're not looking for operational notions or to say because they're a nonprofit. No, they've been around for a long time. But they've also applied, so I don't want anyone to suggest that they're new or that they haven't applied. They applied several times, and with this history and the demographic that they serve, it just seems to be really interesting to me that they keep getting denied. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're clear about that. They are environmentally sound. What they're trying to do has been important. And the only reason why I'm lifting them up, I'm not here saying that your process isn't good. I'm saying that it doesn't work somehow for some people, right? And whatever that is, I just ask that you take a look at it. And I'm not pressuring you for any project. I'm lifting this up because as I looked in Senate File number 3507, there seems to be a glaring omission. And so I just want to make sure that we are saying the right thing. Because again, camping experiences, outdoor, nature is really important when we think in terms of education. You're reading all these notions about education. Here they have camps, they have opportunities. So not for any particular project, but they're a good example of going through the LCCMR process and being denied. And it's kind of hard to understand how we can say that the process works. It works for some people, but not for all. So thank you so very much.
Senator Pratt and Senator Pappas.
I'll pass, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going through the bill. It's very interesting to see some overlap, not in terms of funding, but in terms of topic areas that we look at in the capital investment bill. You know, and since we always have a lot of projects before us as well, I was really excited to see things, you know, a lot of trail money, scientific natural areas, really serious looks at PFAS, septic, a little bit of septic systems. Wouldn't mind having a little bit more in that realm, but those should be kind of things that we just kind of take care of in the normal, our normal tasks as a community. And I know you're looking at more futuristic kind of stuff. But still a lot of rehab money, a little bit toward metro parks. I didn't see too much in terms of geographic breakdown. It seems to me that most of the projects are in rural Minnesota. And of course, we all enjoy our state parks and hunting and fishing in rural Minnesota as well, and taking photos and various activities. So I appreciate the work that you're doing to preserve the great state that we have. But some of these areas I can see, I probably don't need to, my committee probably doesn't need to fund in some areas that you are. So that's good to learn.
Further discussion? If not, Senator Friends moves that,
Mr. Chair,
Senator Hurd, yes, go ahead, make your.
I'd like to make a comment that, first and foremost, my apology if I have missed, project that are community color related. And thank you, Senator Champion. You are a champion for civil rights and also, make us know that we may have overlooked certain things, and I'll do better next time. I'll do better next time. We are revamping LCCMR as well, and so we had design survey as well outreach that will be coming out very, very soon. I just want to take this opportunity to let folks know, to outreach meaning letting people know that such program, LCCMR, exists. And it just, we have just challenged the LCCMR process since my serving on the board alongside with Representative Athena Holland, that why our projects are not so much in the metro and why projects are not quite in depth in terms of reaching folks of color. So we do better, and I apologize. I told the organization that Senator Champion had mentioned Ken Parson. I certainly will look at that next time, but I want to encourage that we will do better in outreaching to our community across the state and also to our community color. And thank you, folks, for the very engaging conversation, and thank you for your support.
And with that, a reminder to people to try and do the outreach by, which is it, March 27th is the deadline?
March 27th, and we, as Senator Hurd was saying, the commission is also undergoing strategic planning right now, and so that is getting public input to help identify future priorities for funding. So I think we'll be getting the word out soon about opportunities for the public to weigh in on some of those thoughts.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? If not, on Senator Friends' motion that Senate File 3507 be recommended to pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion prevails. Division requested. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I counted 6 to 5. Is that right? Okay. On 6 to 5 motion that the bill does, the motion does prevail and the bill is on its way to the floor. Because it's 15 minutes till 20 minutes till session begins, we just notified Senator Westland that we will take up her bill later, the SRO bill. And I don't know if we'll have a chance later today. We'll check with Senator Pratt and other committee members to find out if that would work. So I'm going to just recess until the call of the chair and see if we have a time we could do that later. With that, this meeting's adjourned. Recessed. The meeting is recessed.